Hello, everyone, and welcome to Let's Be Honest with Peter Kozodoy. We are one day away from the launch of my brand new book, Honest to Greatness: How Today's Greatest Leaders Use Brutal Honesty to Achieve Massive Success. I am bringing entrepreneurs, thought leaders, writers, all kinds of amazing folks onto the show to get honest, get vulnerable, share their stories, go a level deeper. Today is going to be a phenomenal interview. I have the one and only John Ruhlin with me, who's the founder of Giftology. The guy is an entrepreneurial machine. John, welcome to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, Peter, thanks for having me, man. I appreciate being here.
My pleasure. So, John, take 3-4 minutes. Tell everyone who you are, what you do, what gets you fired up.
Yeah, well, people hear the word giftology and they're like, I don't give two rips about gifts. Why is this dude on the stage, or why is he being interviewed? And I would agree. Like, nobody cares about gifts, but everybody cares about relationships. And most people think they're a 7 out of 10 when it comes to showing gratitude and appreciation to those valuable relationships, whether that's their wife or whether that's their client or their employee. And really, instead of being 7 out of 10, they're really a -3. But nobody's honest enough to tell them that. Nobody's writes a letter and says, "Dear Peter, I actually thought less of you as a human when I received your trinket with your logo on it, or the box of brownies, and I did $1 million in business with you last year." So I'm kind of an old school farm boy from Ohio. Grew up milking goats. I didn't grow up in the country club or around cool people. I learned a lot of this over the last 20 years from mentors, and my original mentor when I was 20 years old, going into trying to get into med school. I was undergrad, ended up interning with Cutco to pay for school, and ended up finding out from this mentor that a lot of people suck at relationship building, and this guy was an attorney, my mentor Paul. He was amazing at it, and so I started to model what he was doing. And for Cutco, they've worked with about 1.5 million college kids, reps, and distributors over the last 7 years. We became their #1. And I said, you know what? I'm going to start a business around this concept of using gifts and gratitude, not as a woo-woo, warm, fuzzy thing, but as a way to show gratitude and appreciation in a way that drives, revenue and ROI. And so we owned a gifting agency for the last 20 years, and in the last 5 years, we started to write books and speak and do all the, the other more educational side of things. That's the core of our business, is helping people. My 4-year-old, well, she's now 9. At 4, I was like, what do you think Dad does for a living? And she's like, Dad, you help people love on people. And I'm like,
nice.
Man, leave it to a 4-year-old to get to the root of something and really hammer it out. And so I still get chills thinking about her name's Reagan, her statement around that. But that's what we do, man. We send love bombs all over the world for all kinds of people.
I was just going to say, you're essentially in the business of love, in the business of helping people come together and feel the love, which I love. And I think right now more than ever, we need more of that, right? We need more honest relationships. We need deeper connections. We need more connectivity overall. So I applaud the mission. Awesome to hear. John, you talked about 20 years, right? And obviously you have this amazing track. You were going to med school, and then now you're going to run a company based on, Cutco experience, which is awesome. Take us back over the span of that 20 years to a time when you had to get brutally honest with yourself as a leader and make some changes. What comes to mind? What happened, and what did you do next?
Yeah, well, I think there's been a lot of those times. I almost folded the business coming out of school. I was going to marry Paul's daughter, and that relationship crashed and burned. And I was in bed. I was a straight A student, and I almost didn't graduate college.
Wow.
And it was because I had a ring ready to propose, and that relationship just blew up. And it was like, do I want to, am I going to finish school? Life's over. All that kind of stuff. It happened again back in 2007, 2008. I'd sold half the business, thinking it was to scale it and be this, I thought everything I touched turned to gold. And then and then I had found out, my business partner found out my assistant, who was my chief of staff and also my accountant, was stealing, and had to fire her. And then all of the properties, commercial real estate, all that stuff just melted down, and he didn't take a draw for 2 years. And so I had to come to grips with the fact that I enabled her to do that. It was you could say it's her fault, but I was the one that was not looking at the numbers. I turned a blind eye to all of that, and I got caught up in my own ego and arrogance of thinking, oh, I can invest in that and do this and do this, and even to this day, I'm still there's ramifications of decisions I made back then that I'm dealing with. And so, and even my relationship with my wife, who coming up in September is 11 years, like I've had to apologize for stupid decisions I made, and even ego this week, like where I just I didn't ask the questions, I didn't have the follow through, I didn't whatever. And so, man, in 20 years, there's been plenty of times where I've had to be brutally honest, or people have had to be brutally honest with me, and it's not it's not fun at the time, that's for sure.
No, it is not. I write a good bit about things we think are absolutely right and are actually just ego operating underneath the surface that we need to get brutally honest about. And it's, lest we feel too bad for ourselves, John. I mean, I've seen this in startups of the Fortune 500 I've worked with. It is sort of a leader's plague. So listen, going just even one level deeper, what's the biggest win looking back? And it could be personal, family, business that just you are so proud of. And then what's a biggest loss or maybe even regret that you have?
Well, I would say that a big win, the book Giftology, I've had people write me that I've never met before from other countries saying, John, my marriage is better as a direct result of reading this book. And I'm like,
wow,
it's a business book. Like this. But what I realized, and really what the next evolution of the book will end up being, is Gary Chapman's book, The 5 Love Languages. He's become a friend and mentor over the last couple of years, and I'm hoping to write The 5 Love Languages for business with him. He sold 22 million books and whatever else. And really, you mentioned it, love. Like really, nobody cares about gifts, but the gift is just a delivery vehicle for love. It's just carries the emotion. It says, I was thinking about you. I knew you well enough to do this. And so even if your love language isn't gifts, it's still like all of our love languages love. Like we all crave it. I don't care what walk of life you are. So that was a win. I would say from a loss perspective is not having anything in the gas tank and starting off my marriage empty and not being able to show up for my wife and even my kids. Everything was external focused, and I was just trying to prove myself. And even to this day, I think there's an element of like that kind of like poor farm boy, like I got to go prove myself. I got to show people that I'm worth it. I got to show people that I deserve this level of success or whatever else. And so I think that not being able to let go of that kind of mindset at times, but definitely early on, the first 4 years of marriage, I was a sucky. I was not, from an outward perspective, be like, oh, I was a good husband, good father. Like I didn't do anything necessarily like horrible, but I didn't have any of the love and attention and putting them as the priority ahead of the business. The business was my wife. The business was my family. The business was my focus. And if I could do anything over again, it would have been realizing like I needed to have my priorities in order leading up to the getting married. And then those first 4 years and even 5 years of marriage, and leading that family and leading my family. Like I was a sucky leader.
Well, thank you for sharing all that with us. The show is called Let's Be Honest. And, thank you for your honesty, John. Whatever affliction befell you as an Ohio farm boy must also be the same one that afflicts failed figure skaters from Boston, because I have a very similar, personal story. Especially, at the beginning of my relationship, it's shocking my wife stayed with me. I was the one voted most likely to continue being a jerk in high school and in my early 20s. I had to learn honesty, transparency, vulnerability, the power of being honest with yourself and changing. So I often joke to my wife that if I can do it, anyone can. And she looks at me lovingly and says, you're right about that. So John, tell me, where can people find out more about you and your work and follow along with your journey?
Yeah, I would say that the core of what we do is helping people think about. Everybody has a financial plan, a weight loss plan, a workout plan, a marketing plan. Most people don't have a relationship plan.
I love that.
And it's like if all business rises and falls on relationships, employees, clients, vendors, partners, referral sources, centers of influence, you better have a plan on how you're going to show up for those people. And that could be a lot of different ways. Really, it's all 5 love languages: words, it's videos, it's handwritten notes, it's gifts. But having a plan for that. And so I would say giftologysystem.com. What we charge thousands of dollars to go walk people through, they can go do it on their own, and they can go figure it out. Who am I appreciating? Why? What should the budget be? Not what did I have last year, to take them out to McDonald's? Like how do I really show up for people? And so I'd say from there, but download it, go do it. like do it on your own. You don't need us to walk you through it. But beyond that, I mean, you can go to Giftology Group, or you just Google Giftology. There's a bunch of stuff, or Don Ruhlin. But for me, the end of the goal is to get 1 million leaders out there being more radically generous and intentional and thoughtful in their relationships. And if that happens, there's a great trickle down effect for us, but also anybody that people are leading. So that's the goal.
Amazing. Well, listen, John just shared a resource with all of you that's free. Took him how many years to figure this all out?
Yeah, 20 years of blood, sweat, and tears, man.
Yeah, go get the resource, people. Awesome. Well, John, thank you so much. Again, this is Let's Be Honest with Peter Kozodoy. If this is interesting to you, if you understand that honesty is the root of figuring out who you are, what path you're on, where you need to go next, how to improve. I mean, John and I both talk openly and vulnerably about our relationships with our wives and employees. Like, it all comes back to being honest. Pick up your copy of Honest to Greatness. It is out August 11th, 2020. John, thank you so much for being here.
Peter, thanks for having me, man. That's my pleasure.
Yeah. And until next time, thanks for being honest.